Okay, this is a video that I want to just put at the top now that some people may find difficult to view. This is a trigger warning that I will talk about mental illness, eating disorders, self-harm and suicide, and I feel it's important to just put that warning here now because this isn't going to be one of my usual comedic videos. September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month, and it's something that I've always wanted to do a video and a piece on because of my own experiences with mental health difficulties. This is a video that I'm not going to edit. I just feel it's better to keep this raw and real, and it's something I just really do want to talk about because it's not something that I'm embarrassed in any way to talk about. It's obviously upsetting at times to talk about, but it's something that if I had known when I was younger going through these things that other people were, I know it would have helped me. So I've always wanted to try and help others, and if this video can help anyone at all, I really hope it does. So I've had mental health difficulties for the majority of my life. It started around age 12. When I was in primary school, from age 5 to 12, I was obese. But I was in such a small school that I never noticed or was made to feel different. I personally felt different. I always knew I was so much bigger, and I remember even going clothes shopping was always such difficulty. And one time I remember being age 12, going with my mother, and she got me jeans that were 12. And I thought, oh my god, finally I'm in age 12 jeans for a kid. And then when I looked at the label, I realised, no, I'm in a women's size 12. And I just never forgot that moment in particular. But I always was so aware and self-conscious, but I was never made feel different because we were such a close family in my primary school. I mean, there was 11 in my class. We were, honestly, there was 90 people in total in the whole school. So we really were like a family. And it was only when I went into secondary school and was surrounded by so many new people and such a bigger school that I really struggled, because I was broken up from my friends as well and trying to fit in and just trying to be liked. And this is at a time when people obviously are starting to get hormones and develop feelings, and it became very clear that I was in no way liked by any of the boys, and I was actually used as the butt of the joke. That people would push the guys into me jokingly, being like, you know, oh, you're gonna get with Justine, and they'd be like, I'm fucking not. And it was just to make fun of guys. They would use me as a joke, of as if anyone would ever get with her, and they would call me fat bitch, and just constantly feeling like I really don't belong here. And I always felt like it's because I'm fat they don't like me, and if I was thin they would like me. And I got that engraved in my head. And when you're age 12, that's obviously, you don't fully understand things at all. And looking back now, I can be like, Justine, well, at the time that's what I fully believed, and it got into my head that if I was thin they'd like me. And I went from 12.5 stone one summer that year to 6.5 stone. I was obviously diagnosed with anorexia and was put in hospital, fed in a tube against my own will. I did not feel in any way wrong. I was in complete control. I wanted to get thinner. I was still fat. And that's the thing with anorexia. You're never thin enough. You always need to be thinner. You need to be more in control. You need to be cutting more food. You need to be exercising more. And I mean, I would do very drastic things to lose weight and keep weight down, and it's a very secretive, horrible disease to have. And sadly, through recovering, I ended up developing bulimia because I felt so happy that I was making people happy when they saw that I was eating, but I hated it. I didn't want to be. I still wanted to be thin. And because my weight had dropped so low, they didn't have time to delve into why I had started losing weight. They just had to make me gain weight. So I just felt so alone, and even more so alone. And I remember going back to school that year, that September, when I had lost all the weight and hadn't gone into hospital yet, and I was waiting for this moment of they're gonna like me now. And I remember everyone being even more horrified when they saw me because of how emaciated I was. And it was just a horrible feeling of just feeling like no one likes me. And it was a moment of, I changed completely who I was for people to like me, and they still didn't. So that was very difficult. But I then just wanted people to like me. I wanted people to be happy with me, and that's how it developed into bulimia. And through recovery from anorexia, you know, my hair fell out. I had to cut my hair short. It's a very long process to even try and deal with anorexia and recover. And then I started delving into bulimia as a coping mechanism and trying to recover from anorexia, which was something I kept secretive and wish I had spoken up sooner about, because the damaging effects bulimia can have on you mentally and physically are really severe. So then I went on in secondary school to have some of the best years of my life, and I look back now and I don't for a second hold a grudge against the people who bullied me, because they were just trying to fit in. You were just trying to be liked, and I totally went to a very drastic level to feel that same way, but that's all that I was trying to do with losing weight. And those guys bullying and teasing was a means of them trying to impress other boys and try and make friends. And I know it's a horrible thing to do, but I can understand why they were doing what they're doing. What they're doing is in no way acceptable at all. But I know from being, I just wanted to be liked, and I guess that's what they wanted too. It doesn't excuse their actions at all. But I don't feel a grudge. I don't hold a grudge against them, is all. But I went on then to have some of the best years of my life in secondary school, and the best memories and the best friends for life. And it was then towards leaving secondary school, when exams came up, that anorexia came back, because I felt such pressure with exams and needed to get a good leaving cert, and ended up collapsing in school. And I was so weak, and I had to go back into hospital. And it was rough again. It was so bad, but it's a real trait with anorexia, becoming a perfectionist and needing to control everything perfectly. And it's a horrible, horrible disease. Those times, just the worst memories. And so when I went into college, I felt like it was such a kick in the teeth, because all through secondary school, everyone just wanted to be the same. Everyone wanted to be the same. No one wanted to stand out. And me being obese made me stand out, and you didn't want that. You wanted to just be the same as everyone else and be liked. But the second you go into college, it was like everyone wants to be different. Everyone has to be different. Anyone who's the same is like, why aren't you an individual? Why aren't you your own person? And it felt like, oh my God, I've spent so long just trying to fit in. And now I'm back at square one of, again, not knowing anyone and not being liked. And I found that so difficult. I found college very, very difficult. And again, because I was from such a country upbringing, living in the countryside, to now be living in a city, separated again from all my friends, I found that so tough. And I did find a great group of friends, but I always felt like an outsider, or something wasn't fully right with me. And that's how then I started going back into being bulimic, and started self-harming as another coping mechanism in college. And I went through some very dark, lonely times in college where, again, I could never tell or talk to people about these things, because I just felt like I was a burden. And after everything that happened with anorexia and bulimia in secondary school, I didn't want to burden anyone, and I hated causing any fuss. And I'd be the very person who would tell people, you know, if you're going through something, talk to me, and I'd always be there. But I couldn't do it myself. And I never understood that, but I just felt like that's part of having mental illnesses. And it's why people, I think, need to be aware of that fact. You know, we do talk a lot about people need to talk up, and it's in part understanding that often it's at the times when you are in a very bad mental place, you don't want to talk to people, you don't want to open up, and you know that subconsciously that you should do that, but you feel and start to believe it's better off you don't. You're just burdening people, and it's something that you need. And I have also had to work with reminding myself that you need to talk to people. And unfortunately these times in college I didn't, and I turned to self-harm as a way of coping. And I went through a very, very bad period in college, and unfortunately I didn't feel like there was any hope anymore. And it went a series of unfortunate events, essentially, all that kickstarted me off to a point that I felt like there was no coming back, that there was no more life left in me. And I unfortunately tried to end my life, and I overdosed with months and months worth of prescriptions of antidepressants that I was no longer taking, mixed with a lot of other things. And it was that time then that the guards had to break down my door in the college house I was staying in, and I went to hospital, had my stomach pumped, and I remember the feeling waking up. I didn't remember what had happened, and I didn't know where I was. I was very confused. And I remember feeling not relieved at all. I remember feeling like, how could I mess that up too? How could I mess this one thing up? And that's really hard to think that's, you know, looking back now, it's hard to realise just how bad I thought things were, and how that was so far from the truth. Sorry about being a bit emotional here now, but it's hard to look back on that and feel like, Jesus, Justine, if only you could have opened up or talked to someone. And I constantly felt like this through college, that no one else was going through these similar things. And this was again at a time where it was still a bit of a taboo subject. No one really spoke about mental health. It wasn't at a point where it is now, where we are far more accepting and open about our mental health. Like I am now, openly, actively talking about it. This was back at a time when this was not the case, and people really weren't talking about mental health. And I remember in secondary school going to talk to therapists and psychologists. I could not tell anyone in that school. I had to tell people I went for dental appointments, and there was one kid in class who it got rumoured around was attending a mental health service, and it got rumoured into, oh, that kid's crazy kind of a thing. And that again is so far from the truth and is so wrong. And that was the fear that you lived in back then, of like, you can't let people know because, oh my God, what will they think? What will they think is wrong with me? And whereas now it's great that it is reaching a point where we are far more open and accepting. And I just wish and think of how differently things could have been if that was the case for me back then. But all through college it was still a case where it wasn't that openly discussed. But I did get through that and went back obviously to therapy and started cognitive behavioural therapy of retraining my brain. So it's when you get a negative thought to stop it there and stop it escalating and reaching a point where it goes out of control. And you have to keep, it's something you have to constantly work at though. It's not just as simple as going for one session and you're cured. You have to actively as well work with it and force yourself and to remind yourself that these thoughts you're having are bang out of order, you're way out of, they're not in any way real, and they're not, you know, you have to be you have to really, be honest with yourself. Like, are you blowing this out of proportion? And step by step, remind yourself of that you are. Because I would suffer a lot with anxiety, and social anxiety in particular. I'm not great with big new groups. I fear that no one really likes me, and again, these thoughts that I have to remind myself, you're being you're what's the worst thing that could happen here, Justine? Are you really blowing it out of proportion? But that is something that takes a lot of energy and strength, and again, it's at times when your mental health is not at its strongest that it's hard to put these into place. It's hard to want to do that and go through these steps. And it's when your energy is at your lowest and weakest, and it is very hard. And I think that's something that people who've never experienced mental health difficulties maybe overlook, because they think, well, she's gotten therapy, why isn't she cured? And it's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as finding a tablet and you're cured, because there's tablets that don't work. I've been on 3 antidepressant medications, and 2 of those really did not agree with me. I felt so sick. I felt even more depressed on them. My stomach, I had such bad experiences with them. And even with therapists, it took me 5 therapists before I found one that I could even open up to. And that's the therapist that I still go to now. But that even in itself is so deflating, to go to a therapist and feel like this is it, this is what everyone's talked about, that I'm going to be cured now. And you go and talk to them and you come out completely exhausted after telling them your life story, and you feel no better. You feel no hope or optimism because you didn't have a connection with them, or didn't feel you could properly talk to them. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people talk about either, because I'd never heard of that happening before. I'd never heard of someone having a therapist that they didn't connect with, or it didn't work. So that was very disappointing for me, and I wish I'd have known that, and I wish I'd have also known that some antidepressants may not work for you, and to just not give up. And if I could pass that message on to you or to someone who may need to hear this, don't give up. Don't think that you're going to instantly click with a therapist on the first go. Don't think that after taking 1 tablet you're going to feel cured. You have to stick with it, and that's something that I have struggled with, because you're that low, you need and just want something to pick you up at all instantly, and there's no instant fix for this. And it's not like you can take your eyes or the ball off it, because when you do that and you think, I'm fine now, I don't need that, I don't need to take medicine anymore, and you go for a few months without that, I've noticed it with myself that I'll start to slide gently down and I ignore it, and I don't want to think about the fact that I'm not feeling great. And you have to intervene with yourself, because if you don't, you're going to be back in a far worse place again. So it's about being aware of that fact, that dealing with your mental health difficulties and looking after your mental health takes a lot. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of dedication. So I graduated college, started working, and had ups and downs, bouts of bulimia and self-harm throughout that period. But again, it was when I was working full-time working full-time and living in Dublin, and I was in work about 2 years in that role, and again went through a bad experience in my personal life, which then snowballed into a series of unfortunate events where I again did not reach out to anyone, thought I can handle this on myself, and was just ignoring, dealing with things, letting things build up and ruminating. And I unfortunately reached a point again where I tried to take my own life again, and that was a really, really horrific time. But there was a key difference in that this time, after it had happened and I was in hospital, I felt like, what happened to me? How did I let things get that bad? And I met with a psychologist in the hospital who gave me another assessment. I'd been obviously told that I had bulimia and anorexia and depression, but he gave me a key diagnosis that I'd never had or heard before, which was borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder. And obviously I'd never heard of emotionally unstable personality disorder as a term in my life. I didn't know what it was. But as soon as I started listening to the symptoms he was telling me that I have and the traits that I have, and after I left and researched more, I've never felt more relieved in my life. And I know that's a crazy thing to say, being relieved that I've been given this diagnosis, but everything made sense to me. All these things that I've experienced of being really unstable with emotions, unstable with relationships, blowing things out of proportion, struggling with self-harm, struggling with eating disorders, all these symptoms and traits are traits of what people with emotionally unstable personality disorder struggle with. And to have that diagnosis, to know that I'm not alone, that I am not the only person who experiences these thoughts and difficulties, was honestly the biggest weight lifted from my shoulders. Because for all of my life, essentially, I felt like I'm the only person who's dealing with this. Because obviously there's diagnosis for depression, but nothing, and different mental health illnesses, but nothing ever characterized so well the things that I struggle with than seeing this diagnosis. And honestly, that has been the biggest help to me through all this, because I was able to understand that I'm not alone in this, and this is a real thing that other people suffer with. I had felt like a freak, and like I had something that was incurable and that I could not treat, and that was not out there and not known about it. And to have that then, it's crazy to say, but that really made such a difference to me. And it also recommended different treatments and things that can help it. So I actively then started to do more cognitive behavioral therapy, and that again really helped. And that's really been the last struggle I've had, which was 2.5 years now. I have had bouts since where I do go through low periods, and it's about identifying that and knowing what to do when those symptoms come into play, and knowing that you should talk to someone or identify you're having a bad day here now. You know, if you let this slide, what's going to happen, and you know what you need to do now to try and stop that happening. And it takes a lot of strength to do that, because it is at a point with your mental health when you feel so down and so tired and exhausted, and it's at its toughest at that point where you need to do something. It's the toughest point because you don't want to. You want to just let the darkness and things completely take over. It seems so much easier, and it is the easier thing to do, but it's not the right thing to do for you or for anyone around you. And I do still struggle. I do have bad days. I have found lockdown in particular very difficult, as I'm sure anyone, even who hasn't had mental health difficulties, has experienced. It has been such a challenging, difficult time for this entire world to deal with a pandemic. And I've found it very tough at times. And I found it great and such a relief to be able to talk to people online, my friends that I can't see anymore, and to know that other people are going through similar feelings right now. And that's why I'm talking here about it now. And I know this is something that's with me for life. I still deal with a lot of difficulties with food because of anorexia and bulimia, and there's a lot of foods that I don't feel safe eating, and that's something that I am dealing with and have dealt with more. Like, there was a point where I felt embarrassed to tell friends that I had had eating disorders, because we would go to restaurants or places that they wanted to eat, and I knew in my mind I'd be like, oh God, can I even eat something here? And I have myself gotten better of like stopping myself freaking out and thinking, you can do this, Justine, don't be a fucking weirdo here. But I've also gotten a lot better at just explaining to a friend, look, I don't think I'd like to eat there, because I know what's on the menu there wouldn't be stuff that I'd normally eat or feel most comfortable eating. So I've gotten a lot better about that. I've explained to people, you know, I have difficulties, and I don't think it's anything to shy away from or to hide. I'd be very open about my mental health and my difficulties, and I feel like it's something just like, honestly, as breaking a leg or a physical issue, it's something that you need to keep looking after and keep on track with, because I notice it's at the times where I stop paying attention to it that I can feel myself letting it slide. And I have gotten a lot better at identifying things that are going to set me off, and also at identifying things that are going to help me and get me through this. And know that there isn't going to be an instant cure, but you will come through on the other side. And that's something that I wish I could talk and tell to other people, because I don't want you for a second to think that once you go through your 6 sessions with a therapist and do your course of medication that it's gone. It's not. And some people might find that disheartening, but I don't. I've accepted it now, and I know it's something that I want to keep on top of, and it does take a lot of energy and a dedication. And I know it's at times where you are at your lowest that you don't want to do anything, you don't want to look after it. And if I could urge you, please, to just power through at those times, because I've been there, and I've been there recently in those dark places still. And that's why it's something that is terrifying to me, that mental health is for some people still not something they can talk about or deal with properly, or feel like they can talk to someone about it. And I wish everyone knew that you can and should talk to someone and feel perfectly okay going to your doctor about it, or telling a friend or family member or someone that you trust about these difficulties, because it is something that can be managed and that you can have everything in life. It doesn't need to stop you living your life to the fullest. And that's something that I have learned. And definitely it takes time to find what works for you and what doesn't. As I said, it took me 5 therapists, 3 different types of medication, and dedication. And I just hope that anyone who has viewed this, obviously I've given you the shortened version of this whole story, and I've reined in the emotions as much as possible. But I hope anyone watching this does feel like there's hope. There is absolutely hope. There is life to be lived. There is memories to be made. There's laughs to be had. And you fully deserve that. And you deserve to live your life to the fullest. Don't live a compromised life. And don't let mental illness be a stop or hindrance to your life, because you can find ways to deal with it and manage it and live your life to the fullest. And that's something that I hope people can take from this and can feel like they can talk to someone. And I hope that, you know, it was only 2 years ago that I even learned of emotionally unstable personality disorder as a diagnosis. So if you are only hearing that now and think that the symptoms that I've described, or if you Google it and find out more, if it's something that you feel might resonate with you, or you've experienced similar things, do please talk to a doctor. And I hope that it helps someone. I hope this video can help someone. But this month is Suicide Awareness Month, and I obviously unfortunately have had my own experiences with suicide attempts. I've lost friends and family members to suicide, and it cuts me so deep, honestly, thinking of people, thinking of my own experiences. And it's something that we really need to try and work on together, and never stop trying. Just never give up, and just know that you're good enough, you're strong enough, you are worth living for, you are worth it. Believe in yourself, and believe in your future, and believe that things can get better, because I am proof that they can. And I really, really, really hope that you fully believe that, because I've been there. I've been that person who thinks, oh yeah, it's fine for them, but not for me. I know I'm different. I have been there, and I know I'll be there again. And it's at those times when you have to really, 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 really hit it home to yourself that things will get better. Not even things can, things will get better. And I, again, am proof of that. And I hope that this video can help someone, and I really hope this wasn't too difficult of viewing for people who are probably used to more light-hearted content from me, but it's just something I always wanted to do a little video piece on, so I hope this has helped. And yeah, just keep on getting through 2020, and yeah, I'll see you soon for another video, and I hope this video can help. Thanks.